So what's up everyone, Animal Blood here, welcome to my newest YouTube video, and then actually joined here by the one and only LuckyMadman, and we're gonna be talking about some changes that Com2us should make, in our opinion. So, Lucky, introduce yourself, welcome to the channel.
Well, thank you firstly for having me. If we talk about Summon as well, I've been playing Summon as well since September 2014. So I was one of the early starters in the game, a few months after global release, but I did stop for a little bit. Yeah. Really enjoyed it. Got through the game, and I had a lot of friends tell me I should try streaming, so I started streaming. I've been streaming for about 4 or 5 years now, 4 years I think.
Yeah.
Pushing 4 years. Actually, my 4-year anniversary should be coming up soon. So, I stream quite often on Twitch. I've taken a little bit of a break right now because I've been focusing on work and career and life. So, but yeah, I think I just want to say thank you for having me on for this, and I think you got some really good topics to cover up in this video.
Yeah, always a pleasure, man. I love talking to you. I think you're a really smart and passionate person about the game in general. And yeah, for the people that don't know me, I'm on Blood. I have been playing Summoners War for like 4.5 years now. So not quite as long as Lucky, but I'm getting there. I've been streaming for actually a little bit over a year by now. And yeah, I'm very much an RTA focused player. Lucky is more like a Siege player recently. He has been very RTA focused in the past, but shifted a little bit more towards Siege. And I think that's pretty nice for this kind of thing, because we got like 2 different game aspects to look at for these changes that we would suggest.
For sure, yeah. I probably should tell everyone, I was RTA focused, but I felt like it takes a lot out of you if you do RTA for a very long time. I did it for a very long time. I used to play on multiple accounts to be able to try to get as much experience as I was when I was very interested in RTA. During 2019, I competed in SWC. I got G3 throughout RTA, a couple of G2, mainly G2s. I haven't been pushing too hard because G3 just made me lose all my hair. You see? But it was a lot of fun, and I hope one day Unholy Blood gets there as well.
I mean,
it's just a matter of time.
The
meta's always shifting. You're just gonna be on top of the meta, and you'll be fine. So, and that's where like understanding these concepts around the game will help you be able to be ahead of everyone. If you can pick up these concepts, you'll be able to get ahead. So yeah. Yeah,
but I got a few pretty decent upgrades recently. All right, let's get into the topics, I would say. So the first point would be a violent procs. Now, while Com2us have done some violent changes in the past, for example, making it only possible for a unit to proc once per turn, and dimming down the percentage from 22 to 17 to 12 and up to 27. 12% is still just too consistent in our opinion, and 27% is just not enough of a like comeback percentage. So it was still possible to have like fairly one-sided procs, which is why we would like to adjust these values, actually taking the rate after procs down to as little as 2% and up to 42%, meaning there will be a 40% margin between procs if it really goes one-sided for a while. Yeah, so I actually my first opinion was like dropping actually the value down to 0% on these procs, and Lucky came in and he was like, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you would devalue violent runes with that. I think Swift teams would pretty much just destroy you at some point because you're just not gonna proc anymore.
Yeah, so it got to the point where I think it was 3 or 4 procs and you'd be at 0% chance to violent proc again. And if you're running a full Swift team against a full Violent team, that means it becomes, after 3 Violent procs, it becomes an even playing field. And if you think about Swift stats, it's about 20 to 30 speed more on the other team on average, right? So it kind of totally takes away the violent aspect of the game. So one thing I recommended was, we can, Com2us has this method that they've already applied, which is going down 5% and going up 5%. Yeah. But I think from my perspective, they've capped it at 27, as the highest point, but their lowest point can go down a few more steps. So from my perspective, I thought, well, why not we accentuate that? Why don't we make it more of a gap to kind of make it a bit fairer? You should be able to go down as low as 2 or 7% maybe, and the upper point could be as high as 37 to 42%, which means it really brings a bit more of an equality to the game, because there still are aspects of the game. I know it doesn't happen as much since they've implemented this, but there's definitely still some sort of aspect where violent does take the game away from you, especially like if it's turn one plays. We've spoken about it before. Turn one plays, two procs or three procs, and it's already game over.
Yeah, so sometimes it only takes one, but I mean that's also kind of like draft dependent. Making this kind of changes would definitely push it in more like fair direction, and also make violent procs more expectable, right? When someone is at like 7% or maybe even down to 2%, you don't really expect them to proc anymore. While when you are at 42% or even 37%, you're like, okay, maybe like one more turn, and after that I should be proccing most likely.
Exactly.
So yeah, just like we want a little bit less RNG. Like Com2us, we understand that RNG is definitely a big like fun and comeback mechanic in terms of like the game in general. For example, accuracy, resistance, violent procs, actual activation rate for skills, like all that takes into RNG, but it's also kind of part of the fun. If you would land everything all the time, or if you would proc every single turn, or if you would never proc, that would just be like, okay, I won the draft, so I won the match. And so we understand that RNG is necessary, but we want a little bit less of that. Okay, yeah, anything you want to add to these changes, to these violent proc?
I think the current state of the game also makes violent very strong. There's so many units that really utilize a turn one proc very well.
Yeah, true.
Chung Pung definitely is probably the biggest culprit. Okeanos is very, very good when he procs as well.
Savannah also is up there.
Beast Riders, I was going to say Beast Riders, if they proc, you're probably dead. So a lot of units can utilize that turn one violent proc very, very well.
Yeah.
But that's not the concern here, right? The concern is when there's multiple procs on one side and not many procs on the other side. So what we're trying to say is, we want to move the maximum rate from a 1 in 4 chance approximately to about a 1 in 3 chance. So that's a pretty big change.
Yeah.
So I think that'll make it a bit fairer. And then, because right now the upper scale is really hard capped, whereas the lower scale you can kind of get lower and lower, but you don't really feel it as much as you do when you've got the a higher upper cap as well.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, yeah, turn one procs are definitely of concern. But I think that's for like another discussion, because I personally don't think there's any way we could like suggest a change to that right now.
No, I don't think so. I think it's more so the meta that's very impacted.
Yeah, for sure.
Impacting it. Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, we have some more changes lined up that should adjust the meta just a little bit.
For sure.
Okay, yeah, let's move on to point 2 right here. So next is accuracy and resistance checks. Now, I actually came up with this whole formula thingy that I implemented right here. And first of all, let me tell you where I'm coming from. Right now, the calculation is resistance minus accuracy, right? First of all that, and it cannot go lower than 15% resistance. Meaning if you have 100 resistance and the enemy has 85 accuracy, you're at that 15% point. So there's actually no real reason to run 100% resistance against someone who has 85 accuracy, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, if someone, for example, would have, I don't know, 60 resistance, 70 resistance, there's just no point against someone with 85 accuracy. So I want to give accuracy and resistance equal value. Meaning, what would I suggest? In my opinion, 100% accuracy versus 100% resistance should be 50% chance to hit and get resisted. Equal value. in retrospect, if you run 100% resistance and the enemy wants 85% accuracy, okay, there's still those like 15%, right? To further amplify this, I would actually remove the 15% base resistance from every monster as well as the hard cap. Meaning if you actually run 0% resistance, your enemy will always land.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty much my point. Also, on a different kind of note, with artifacts as well right now, you can actually make up for some missing accuracy in terms of like skills. For example, if you're looking for an Okeanos S3 and you only run like 70% accuracy on your Okeanos, you're just searching for 15% on S3, right? And then you're done. You're at the accuracy cap.
Yeah. No, I think what you're saying is definitely more fairer, because right now there is a very heavy value towards accuracy than there is resist. So the point here is trying to make it equal value, so 1 for 1. So if you're running, 100 res and the opponent's running, 10% accuracy, they should only have a 90% chance to. There's a 90% chance to resist. Yeah. That's how it should play out, rather than the way it's currently trading off.
Exactly.
So I mean, yeah, there should be a lot more value applied on it.
And I mean, at the same time, we wouldn't really take away too much from like these turn 1 versus turn 2 teams. Because essentially you really need to get those 100% resistance, and if you remove the 15% base resistance, it's going to be harder to get that, so you actually need to invest more. And also accuracy still has the artifacts, right? Yeah,
definitely. And that kind of makes it a bit more of a level playing field for people that do try to build on resist, and when you face a 100 accuracy comp, at least you got some sort of chance still.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to this point?
Not really. I think it's a pretty straightforward point. It's just matching accuracy to res, putting them at equal value, and getting rid of the base resist to be able to counteract the entire argument of one res equals, if you got 1% accuracy, 1% res, it's 50% chance to land.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair argument there. Yeah.
Right. Then I would say let's move on to point 3, artifacts. Now, actually, before recording this video, we had like a major argument here and spent like 30 minutes arguing back and forth how to exactly change this. Yeah, but in the end, we came to a conclusion that I think is definitely fair, because additional damage right now, and that's the point why we actually want to tune down artifacts. Additional damage is just completely overpowered, right? So I'm not really gonna go into the math that I actually drawed up here. I'm just gonna make a quick point. 2 artifacts, additional damage by speed is 40%. Rerolls would be 120%. 2 artifacts is 240%. On an Okeanos with only 280 speed, that would tune out to 672 damage just for additional damage by speed on every single hit. And that's the problem. Multi-hitters definitely benefit way too much from this. Okeanos has 6 hits on average on his S3, if I'm correct about that.
Yeah, 4 to 6. I think it's 4 to 6, yeah.
Yeah. So 6 times 672, that would be about 4k damage in total.
Yeah.
On every single monster on the enemy board. Yeah. Well, full taking Okeanos, I think that's a little bit too much.
Yeah, most definitely. We're seeing it definitely in the game right now. All oracles, Fran even, Lucia, any multi-hit units, we're seeing them deal so much extra damage purely because of additional damage artifacts.
Yeah. Water Monkey just straight up one-shotting it like a true Wusa shield. Yep.
Does not surprise me.
So, yeah, you actually pretty much came up with these suggestions, suggested them to me, and I thought, okay, this is actually a pretty good way to implement this. So we have 2 different ways lined up here. So the first suggestion would be dumbing it down to pretty much calculate on total damage dealt, and then dividing it by the number of hits. So, for example, these 672 that we talked about in the example before would be divided by the number of Okeanos hits, 6 in this case, and would come out to 112 damage per hit.
Yeah.
So just spreading these 670 to even.
Correct. Yeah, it's just so like right now, because right now the major issue is additional damage applies to every single hit that the monster does, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you hit once, you hit twice, you hit 6 times. It'll do the additional damage for every single hit. So that 672 will happen, you know, Leica skill 1, 672. Fran skill 1 would be 672 times 3. Shiho skill 3 would be 672 times 6. So it really exemplifies the value of additional damage. So the idea with this is to effectively make the total damage come back to 672, what the total value of the additional damage artifact to be. So that's the first idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually talked about this, and I was kind of under the impression that it would nerf additional damage a little bit too much, which is why you actually came up with the second suggestion right here. So the other kind of suggestion would be to just half the additional damage on hit for every hit. Meaning, again, 672 on 6 hits for an Okeanos would essentially turn down to 1,323 damage in total.
And that was compared to the 4,000, just over 4,000 before.
Yeah. So, yeah, this would definitely be less of a nerf, but still a pretty big nerf, which deservedly so. Additional damage is just way too overpowered right now, and we need to turn it down.
Definitely. I think the issue with the artifact system itself is that if you're very RTA focused, it's additional damage or nothing pretty much right now. There are a few that are pretty good, but nothing really trumps additional damage. You're usually chasing additional damage plus some form of accuracy in a lot of artifacts. And now, what we're trying to do is by kind of bringing down additional damage, it's to kind of let the other substats of artifacts shine. There are some pretty good ones through that people do use for siege, like damage reduction, damage on certain units. So, like for example, stacking a copper with more damage dealt on water if you want to snipe off a water unit turn 1. You know, crit damage. You know, based on HP condition. So like. When the HP condition's bad, you probably want something like that on Illusion, because every card that you do will end up doing more damage as you take more HP off the unit. So that can kind of stack Illusion a lot more. You know, skill 3 crit damage, stuff like that could work on Katarina. All that sort of jazz. There are so many combinations that you can go for, but a lot of people don't really look into that as much because there's so much value running additional damage.
Yeah. And
so that's the idea of trying to bring that down to see other substats shine a bit more.
Exactly. So if this were to be implemented, if additional damage would be nerfed, people just actually have to put in a lot more thought and actually think about why run this stat right here in this situation on this monster, and not just slap additional damage on it, it's gonna be fine.
Exactly right, exactly.
So actually additional damage also is true damage, right? So it actually doesn't go into this like defense calculation or anything. It doesn't get reduced. There's nothing to counter it. Even like reducing damage from element would not affect this at all.
Isn't it all? No.
Yeah.
It's all pure damage. It is whatever the calculation gives is the output damage.
Yep.
So ignore defense.
Exactly.
It's a lot of damage. Yeah. It's kind of scary.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to this point?
Not really. I think artifacts are a very interesting concept that they've brought into Summoner's War. I do want them to kind of expand a bit more into artifacts, but I think they need to be able to kind of fix the current issues with it. It's like if they came out with Violent Runes and Violent Runes had a 40 or 50% chance to proc.
Yeah.
Compared to being a 22, right? So
yeah.
It's a little bit
expand
scary,
into artifacts. What do you actually mean by that? So, do more.
So what I'd like to see them do with artifacts, I'd like them to consider other sort of substats. So
okay,
I want them to, and I mean they've got some interesting ones already, like, you know, HP upon revival, you know, attack bar based on revival, that sort of stuff. But I want them to be a bit more over exemplified. Like I think of a unit like Tyrannus, for example, self-revive. Right now, the amount of attack bar you get from the substat, I don't think is enough to make him really steal a turn.
Yeah.
But it'd be cool if you can get like 40% attack bar upon revival for a unit like that. So then if he dies, he can steal a turn.
Okay.
And then maybe have a bit more of an impact to the game. So I want to see aspects like that come out. I want them to also have something that's, you know, maybe even something that increases resistance.
Yeah, that would be interesting to counteract the accuracy.
Yeah, to counter the accuracy. But that one's a little bit trickier because it would feel like kind of a dead stat. Because it's really hard to go, okay, accuracy increased by X amount. Because that's just like, well, it's just like another rune sub.
Yeah.
It's not a fair balance. And then, you know, if they introduce that, then it'd be like skill 3 resistance plus 10%. And it's like, well, that's kind of weird, you know? But I wanted something along those lines. But I think it's something that is pretty hard to implement. Yeah, okay. I don't know. There's a few ideas that I kind of have in my head, but I do want to see them bring out other aspects. What about something that increases the size of a shield? We haven't seen any of that.
That would actually be interesting, because I feel like shields are, well, they definitely do impact a little bit of in like RTA and stuff, and also in Siege, for example, with Rusa being a pretty decent unit there. But amplifying that via artifacts would be like a new kind of aspect to that, to give it more value.
And I think the other aspect of it would be the other thing I was thinking was maybe damage reduction based on number of based on number of beneficial effects. Something like strange like that, you know, like minus 10% damage per beneficial effect.
Okay. I mean, that's definitely a topic for another time. But at the same time,
I can definitely talk about artifacts all day.
At the same time, Vigor would love that. Vigor with his speed buff, with his anti-crit, he would love that damage reduction per beneficial effect.
Yeah.
Okay. I think let's move on to the next point. So we're actually on to a little bit shorter changes, which is why there's a little bit more on the page. So first of all, monster AI in Kairos Dungeon. That's been a problem for as long as the game's been out, pretty much. Lucian not using his S3, Galleon not defense breaking, Lyn not using her nuke, like everything, just everything. I think, would it be fair to say people complain as much about monster AI as violent runes?
Yeah. I mean, kind of. We know people like to complain a lot about the game, so I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. What kind of change would we suggest here? We would just suggest giving players an option to choose a priority for the monster skills. For example, just going into the Kairos Dungeon run itself, tapping the little gear icon on the bottom left for settings, seeing all the monsters there, selecting a skill, and just set it to priority 1, 2, 3, whatever. Basically, that monster would always use the skill with the highest priority that's currently available. Yeah, that would straight up be an easy fix. They wouldn't have to change monster AI at all. It would still be the same in Arena, in Guild Wars, and Siege. It wouldn't basically affect anything except for Kairos Dungeon, actually making it a little bit more reliable and easier to build like safe teams.
I mean, I was thinking something else while we spoke about this a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
But they could extend it a little bit more if they wanted to. Imagine trying to amplify it to the point of like doing it for siege defenses. So, for example, you know, you'll have some units that you want to use skill 3 turn 1. But what about a unit like Chung Tun? You'd want him to use skill 2 turn 1. So imagine being able to kind of gear your team around the ability to tweak what skill it does straight off the bat. So I think that'll kind of mix up the siege meta a little bit more than right now, because like you could set up so many defenses in so many different ways. There is, let's say for example, Commune Vigor Ethna, right?
Yeah.
It'd be cool if you can kind of set Vigor to do skill 3 instead of skill 2 first, or Maybe the other way around. Maybe you wanted to do skill 2 and then skill 3. You know, trying to give it the better priority, and it kind of mixed up the entire aspect of the game. But I think your point here is around dungeons, and I know I'm going off topic here, but I just thought that would be a cool thing to kind of go on with trying to think about AI management, because as you mentioned, AI is really bad in this game.
Yeah.
For example, people were building Julie Lucian for Giants back when Giants B10 was still a thing. People were building Julie in front of Lucian so it would do enough damage, and then it'll bring everything down low enough where Lucian would then definitely prioritize skill 3. Exactly. So for some reason, Lucian's AI sets it that, you know, it would consider doing skill 3, but you can make it guaranteed do skill 3 if you get a Julie that moves in front and does a little bit of damage.
Yeah.
So
same with Shayna for dragons, right? Use Julie in front, Shayna afterwards, clearing the whole wave. I miss my 19-second Dragon Stand team. But yeah, I mean, Monster AI in terms of Siege has been a topic in the past. People like saying, oh, just give the monsters perfect AI. No, that would actually not be a good change, because it would just be expectable what the monster does in certain situations. Exactly. But actually giving the player the option to choose what their monsters do themselves on defense, maybe even for arena defense, you know, giving Triton that juicy S3 that he actually will use then. For sure. Yeah, that would definitely be an idea, but I also think that's a topic for another time as well. But yeah, going off topic is definitely very much appreciated. Please continue doing that, because that's the whole point we're having this discussion, right? I could go down my whole list myself and be done in like 10 minutes, but yeah, this kind of discussion is why I have you here.
Most definitely, yeah. I think for sure having some sort of option would be nice. Personally, for me, it doesn't make a difference. There's so many. So what people have been doing in the meta is they've been trying to sidestep AI and try just use the smartest team possible.
Yeah.
Which is why we see Tricarus, which is why we see the Sath team coming out. Because it's really hard to falter a team where if you target a unit and it puts dots on, cool. You know, like you can force target the boss. It's whatever.
Yeah.
Same with Tricarus. You know, it's always going to use team up because it prioritizes that skill. BJ5, another one. You know, you get Battle to max stacks. He's definitely doing third skill.
Yeah.
Janssen's definitely going to revive if there's a dead teammate. Colleen's going to heal if you get a unit low enough HP status. You know, that team was all designed to to kind of manipulate the AI to do what it's meant to do.
Exactly. I mean, if we just think back to the past a little bit, there was this like Maths Plus Games Necro team using 5p race. Not only Necro, I think he used that in every single dungeon with the 5p race. And p race just have perfect accuracy if you are at 100% HP, and that's why the team was this insane, like this genius, pretty much coming up with that. But yeah, I think let's move on to the next point right here.
Sure.
So the next point would be RNG and PvE regarding accuracy and resistance. Now, we actually made a point about accuracy resistance change that we would like to see in general, actually giving it equal value. So this is like a continuation of that. Just please decrease all the resistance from PvE monsters to 0. I do not need my max accuracy, Lauren, whatever, to actually miss her defense break, miss her strip. There will still be activation rate, of course. That's definitely a factor that still be there. But I do not need this like accuracy resistance RNG in my PvE dungeon runs. I do not want to fail BJ5 run because all 3 Laurens actually miss their defense break, and that can actually happen.
Yeah, it doesn't happen too much.
Yeah,
I think the only thing that I personally think they need to dumb down the resistance on is the Giants mid boss. Yeah. Otherwise, I think the rest of it's okay if you kind of set your team up well enough.
I mean,
obviously you get the once in a blue moon, 3 Laurens missing the armor break, but me personally on this RNG point, I agree with it purely only on the mid boss for Giants, because that unit has 150 res.
Yeah.
The rest of them are, they're at there's caps for them. Dragon 65 cap.
Yeah.
Giants is meant to be a 55 cap, right? But the mid boss is just in its own league, and that's because I think the water golem has innate resist. in the passive. I'm not too sure.
I think he does,
but I
yeah.
think that's what drives it up. Yeah, so like it's just a unit itself. But
Yeah.
it is what it is. I think there are definitely workarounds for it. So this one's probably not the biggest change, but it'd be nice if they kind of dumbed it down and made it like a level playing field. Because yeah, that Giants mid boss is the most painful thing to deal with, especially I think if you're an early gamer and relying on, your 100 accuracy Lauren to do something, your Galleon to land that armor break, and if it doesn't, then everything goes sideways, and that's a failed run for you. So.
Yeah, but I personally just think we do not need this like RNG in PvE. Like RNG in PvP, that's fine. That's content that I actually play manually. That's content that I actually sit in front of and control my team. But like PvE, when I start a Terra auto run, set my tablet on the desk, I do not want to come back after 2 runs and see run failed. I just don't. Yeah. But alright, let's move on. So next on the list would be Rift Beasts. Now, Rift Beasts, especially with Determinations runes being more of a focus again, right? In the past, people were focusing on Rift Beasts for mainly fight runes, for like BJ5 teams and faster dungeon runs and stuff like that. But now with Tricario especially, a lot of early and mid-game players focus a lot on determination runes to actually get their defense value up. And while I do think that's a decent way to do it for sure, that's probably the easier way still in comparison to just farming dragons with like a 2-minute team hoping for some guard runes. But at the same time, Rift Beasts just do not feel rewarding for actually farming. And that's the point that we brought up. They take too long. You cannot improve your runtime in a Rift Beast because the groggy phase is actually hit based, right? So you would need the fastest animation time on your monsters to get the most hits as possible in a short duration to actually get that slightly faster, which is not possible. Basically, you cannot speedrun them like Kairos.
No, definitely not.
Okay, so right now the way it is, you get like, I don't know, 15 or so of these like stone thingies of the big drop, and like maybe 5 pure, 6 pure, something like that. Yeah, and like, I don't know, 3 or 4 of the condensed, something around that. And then 1 random drop riff can be mana, which can be grindstones, which can be 5-star blue runes. And just not rewarding to farm for. So what would you suggest? Just increase the overall drop rate slightly. Give like a few more materials here and there. And maybe tune down the mana drop rate a little bit. Maybe even give mana, and that's actually a point that you added for Rift Raid later on. Maybe just give mana as an additional drop. Take it out of the drop pool, but give it as like an additional drop. So you have your regular crafting materials, the grindstone, and then the mana drop. Also, Triple S is definitely very easy to reach nowadays, especially with artifacts being around, especially with twins being still strong in Rift Beast, Brandia, Crow, Naomi, everything just doing tons and tons of damage. There's leaderboard scores with like 11 million damage or something, and that's just like, okay, so why do we not reward these players just a little bit who actually focus on building actual teams, not just slamming their Marth and Agar in there with like 4 twins and pressing auto. So that's why I would like to see a rank above Triple S. Damage value obviously is like, up to Com2us to just here, but I would say like around maybe 5 million. I think 5 million is a point where you actually just put a little bit of effort into your team, but it's still reachable mid game. I do not want to push like end game, what's the Dark Lightning Emperor teams in there.
That comp that just chases everything.
So let's just add like mid-game threshold for damage on Rift Beast that actually gives decently rewarding drops. Especially, I would say, at this point, you should get at least 6-star blue runes, just like Kairos. especially because you can't really speedrun it, right? A 2-minute run should be able to give you something rewarding.
Yeah. I think in regards to this, so I've got a couple of different ideas. And what I think they could do is they could, instead of introducing a new bracket, because it is already triple S, it's kind of weird to add another score above it, right?
I mean,
so I'm thinking, what about if they shift it down? What if they made triple S, like score, the score you need to hit triple S, make it double S. And make double S S,
okay.
right? And what you do is you make triple S now, let's say 4 million, okay? But that becomes like B12 equivalent. So it makes it 6-star runes only. It gives you maybe 50% more drop than what you get in the current triple S. And then it also means you have to strive it a little bit more to be able to get your team higher. I think it'd be a perfect time for them to also consider reworking the bosses slightly if they wanted to. Like they've had it set in their own ways for a while. They could kind of revisit and think, okay, well, you know, we could probably mix it up a little bit. So people have to think of something slightly differently. They could make the bosses even slightly harder as well if they wanted to, just to make it a bit more valuable to be able to try get that score. And then the next thing is they could make the animations faster in there as well. They can make the runs be maybe 50% faster. Sorry, 50% faster. So not like overly faster, but like just a little bit faster so it doesn't feel as long. So those are the sort of things that I think I would like to see there.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't take away you know, being able to get a certain score. It kind of introduces a new barrier for people to break. And if you break that new barrier, then you'll get rewards equal to that. So that's just kind of my 2 cents in that one.
I think my take on this is, while I do not mind change, I do not mind them like refreshing it up a little bit, just like changing around a few mechanics and here and that. I don't think they should make it harder, just because early and mid gamers should be able to farm their detonation runes, should be able to farm their fight runes, and so that's my kind of take on that. But yeah, overall, I do agree with what you're saying. I would be fine with that kind of change as well. So yeah, let's move on to World Boss. Now, short and easy. Triple S clears should not give 4-star white runes anymore. That's it. Now, if you can clear Triple S World Boss, you're pretty much at like, I would say 60% efficiency hero runes, somewhere around there with like artifacts. I do not think you have any usage left for 4-star white runes.
I think World Boss in general is a bit outdated now as well.
Yeah. Because
this was set, the old damage thresholds were set, you know, before B12 was around, before artifacts were around, you know, early during R5 times. So it'd be good to kind of get some sort of rework done on World Boss. Maybe they revalue each damage point and figure out, you know, what percentage of players are hitting this X point. And, you know, maybe applying some sort of bell curve for them to figure out, okay, we only want the top 2% of players to get triple S. So what does that look like right now? And that's where they set triple S. Then they set double S and so on. So I could see that threshold being pushed as high as maybe 2.5 million for triple S. And that'll kind of push a lot of players to try and get their teams to 2.5. And I think at the same time, that's when you can buff the value of the drops. Because I think right now, if you have a water unit with 6-star runes and 2 artifacts that are maxed out, you should be able to get triple S sort of thing, you know? I don't think it's as hard to do now than it used to be pre-artifacts. Pre-artifacts is like, it made my scores go up by 200, 300,000. Yeah. And I didn't do anything except for just throw artifacts on.
I mean, what am I at right now? I think my first team is at like 2.7. My second is at like 2.5. My third is at like 2.4.
Exactly.
And even with those teams, I'm just getting G1 actually. I'm just getting a World Boss G1 finish in there. So I don't know. It definitely should be reworked just slightly. And I mean, when World Boss was first released, Com2us actually had the like intention of actually changing his elements every now and then, right? And okay, let's not pour salt in the wound. I think Com2us knows that the player base remembers that, and that the player base does want to change there. I just don't understand why Com2us hasn't done anything there yet.
I
But
think personally,
alright.
I think it's about the investment people have made into World Boss, because some people do make the investment in building lots of dupe like Gildongs. I don't know if you've seen one of Seishizo's latest
Yeah.
videos. He showed him running 10 Gildongs in Siege. I mean, he's someone that's invested heavily into World Boss, right? Now, so imagine suddenly changing that up and making it the complete opposite. So water's now the weakest. It throws a lot of people off, but I wouldn't mind that shift maybe once every 3 months.
Yeah.
Because, you know, someone out there may have a lot of fire units built and they might, you know, they'll start shining. It'd be good to see, you know, other people succeed because of change, to see who really stands up and takes advantage of the situation.
Yeah, and also I don't even think it definitely has to be element specific only. I think we could actually do more with that. For example, type specific. Use attack type monsters, use support type monsters. Just like change it up.
Yeah, some sort of change would be definitely nice.
Alright. Yeah, we already talked about what we would kind of change with Rift Raid here. Basically just take out the mana drop out of the actual drop pool and just give an item drop plus the mana drop.
Definitely. I think mana makes a big portion of the drop pool.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool if they could strip that out and we start seeing more grinds and gems come out of it. Because there's so much junk we already deal with. So many blue grinds and gems. So like it'd be good to kind of see mana being pulled out and that being kind of balanced throughout seeing more purples and maybe seeing more purple gems as well.
Yeah.
Because gems are already so hard to come by. It'd be good to see us being able to get a few more gems definitely in the drop pool.
Yeah. So actually talking about this, I'm kind of thinking of something else as well. Grindstone inventory. So grinds and enchants in general. Com2us has always been expanding the inventory slightly, just giving like 100, 200 more spaces here and there. That's not enough. It's just not. With every new dimensional dungeon coming out, we get new ancient grinds and gems, and it just takes up so much space. I'm full on grinds and gems. I do not have any flat stats in my storage except for legendaries. I do not really keep like an endure and enhance and guard and all these kind of grinds anymore. I pretty much only keep violent, will, swift, despair, and maybe some nemesis or something in here. And my inventory is full. Completely.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mine's always full too. I think I've got a little bit of a hoarding problem when it comes to that as well, because I'm always concerned to sell like ancient blues.
Okay.
And that's because you never know if you can use them ever.
I mean, true.
It's such a limited resource that like maybe one day you'll get a rune and you'll be able to use it on it. Because I've got a few like will ancients that I'm still waiting for the right grind. I'm still waiting for the right gem to be able to finalize that rune.
Yeah,
and
I've actually been
so hard to come across.
Yeah, I've actually been selling all these kind of blues just because I don't have space, and now I have like this will HP slot 6 with like 26 attack and I don't know 18 defense, 17 speed, some accuracy, something in there, and I'm just waiting for a speed grind. A speed grind is all that I need.
For sure.
But yeah, so what's kind of been my idea is Com2us has made this new monster storage thingy, right? Where you can store 999 of every monster. Also the same storage kind of exists for like these rainbow monster, devil monster stuff. You can store 999 of each monster. That's it. I know that is definitely a storage concern, but would it be possible to just make a building 99 maybe even only 99 of every grind done?
I just think like grind should be stackable, and you should be able to stack up to 10.
Stack up to 10.
That'll kind of limit people on how many they could keep, or maybe not even 10. 10 might be a bit too harsh. Maybe 20.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I know someone who has like, I don't know, 50 or so will hero grinds for speed in there, and he definitely doesn't want to sell those.
Like bio speeds waiting.
Yeah. So yeah, just make some kind of adjustment to get away from this always needing to increase space. Add either a building or make them stackable, as Lucky mentioned. Just get away from this idea of having to expand the storage by like 100 or 200 every second patch.
For sure, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say let's move on. Now, this next point is actually one I added yesterday after we talked, so you haven't read this one yet. So I do not know your opinion on this, but I think rune crafting is not really relevant anymore. Getting 5-star runes just does not feel rewarding. Because how it's set up right now is you need to get 1 symbol X, 1 symbol Y, and then rune pieces to craft a rune, right? So you need at least 3 drops in Kairos to craft 1 rune, which is 5-star more or less 60% of the time, right?
Yeah.
So what would I do to this? I think Com2us needs to add a new tier of rune crafting above the high rune crafting. So I just called this craft superior rune really quick. Obviously it's up to change. And I would just say the step from crafting I think it's called normal runes to high runes is doubling the essences. So it's 9 to 18, it's 3 to 6, and it's 6 to 12 in terms of rune pieces. And I would just go ahead and double that again. So 36 symbols X, 12 symbols Y, 24 rune pieces.
Yeah.
And also, I think we should increase the drop rate of materials, or rather, not really the drop rate, the drop amount of materials, just slightly to increase for this need of materials.
I like the idea, but I'm kind of against, for now. I think it's something that we'll probably see in the future, but I think right now, I think it's a bit too strong. I think personally, all they need to do is really up the quantity of the drops. So I think right now between B10 and B12, I want to see the quantity of crafting material double.
Okay.
I want there to be a bit more emphasis on crafting, because I think crafting is a very good way for people to get certain runes if you use your crafting material for the right purpose. Yeah, there's the chance of getting 5-star, but the way you look at, for me personally, the way I think people should look at crafting materials are just bonus runes that they're trying to get of a specific type to be able to kind of expand their runes, right? To try to chase certain things, right? I might farm dragons consistently, but with my pieces, I'm gonna craft, all will runes because that's what I want from somewhere else. But I'm not farming Necro because right now I'm chasing Violent, Revenge, and Shield, for example. But I don't really want anything out of Necro, so I just want Nem. Or not Nem, Will. But people at the same time would say the same thing about Giants, I just want Swift runes, so I'm going to farm Dragons and craft Swift runes. Or people might farm Giants and craft Violent runes, because that's all they really want. So I think right now it might be a little bit too early in the game, because I think if you allow too much access to runes, especially through crafting, I think it'll devalue farming runes just a little bit, because it makes it easier that you don't have to go cross areas to be able to get the runes you need. And I think runes are already pretty easy to get, especially breaking into like the 18 speed marks, the double speed rolls, for example, or like getting pretty efficient blue or purple runes. I think it's very, very easy to get now, but I think it's harder to get that top tier end game rune. And I think it should still kind of be that way to a certain extent. I think because they've just released B12. I say just released B12, but it's almost been a year now. But I think we'll probably see something along the lines of a 6-star only crafting thing. I just think Com2us is very smart about all these sort of things. They'll probably come out with it a little bit later on in the game once everyone's settled. They've been farming for a while. B12's now become the norm for everyone to farm. So there's become starter teams that you can, within a week get to Giants B12, Dragons B12, stuff that we haven't discussed yet. But there'll be stuff like that that'll come up, and then they'll realize, what? Now's the time to drop the 6-star crafting. And this is where people will be able to now really quickly catch up, because they'll farm their one specific dungeon and craft the other rune, and they'll be able to build up their rune base very, very quickly. The concern is that you want to still find the right balance of monster, like obtaining certain monsters, as well as keeping the runes at the same sort of growth. So there's sometimes where you'll feel where if you're really focused on farming, your monster box doesn't grow as quick as your rune base does. But then if you'll end up in a phase where you'll summon like 4 or 5 brand new units, and it's like, shit, where do I get all the runes to rune this up? When you finally get the Chung Kung and Okeanos and the Savannah you've always wanted, you're like, where do I get these 170, 180 violence sets to how to rune these? So it's like, it hits you really quickly when you get those units. But sometimes it's really good to be able to just get to that base slowly but surely. You kind of don't want to make it too easy for everyone to get 180 violence sets, because then what separates everyone? Like, what separates people? It becomes very hard to create that separation.
Yeah, I mean, I would be fine with just increasing the material drop at first and maybe adding 6-star crafts later on. That's fine.
Sure,
I just would like to see it in the future, because again, 5-star runes just feel like a sell 95% of the time, right? You only really keep 5-star runes from crafting if they are legendary with a 5 speed sub and they roll like quad speed.
Right. For sure, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think let's move on here. So next on the list would be RTA matchmaking. This is something that a lot of people have been talking about in the past, and it's definitely a slight problem. Recently, I think matchmaking has gotten a little bit better, just because more players actually do play RTA, since we now can farm while doing RTA. It's actually slightly more rewarding to do RTA as well, since they introduced all these like achievements which give a lot more points. They've been actually a lot better in terms of like allowing people to get skins from seasons I don't know, years ago. But I still think there needs to be a little bit of a fix, because for example, a Fighter 2 player on a winning streak can definitely easily queue into a Conqueror 2 that's on a slightly losing streak. And I think a Fighter 2 versus Conqueror 2, that's just too much of a power difference, which just makes a Fighter 2, why do I queue into this person? Why do I have to fight him? It's just not fun. I'm sitting here with my 5-star units with like barely 6-star runes, and this guy's flexing all LD net 5s on me. What do I do about this? So what we kind of came up with is allow people to only face players 1 division up or down from you. Well, that's for the lower ranks. Fighter 2 should only be able to fight Fighter 1 and Fighter 3, no longer Conquerors. But obviously, if you're looking into the higher ranges of ranks, there's not as many players there. So queue times, if we were to implement it just like that, would get a little bit long. And also, there is definitely less of a power discrepancy between like Guardian 1 and Guardian 3 than there is between like Fighter 2 and Conqueror 2. So just make it 1 rank or above or below in lower ranks, and starting at Guardian, players will be able to fight pretty much everyone up in the ranks there. So G1 can fight C3, G1, G2, and G3.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'd like to add to that is Com2us has already tried making it a bit fairer for fighter players by, I think when you win, you get double the points that you do compared to when you lose. I think that's something that they introduced recently, right? I don't know the exact wording behind it, but I know they introduced something where losing in fighter and below isn't as painful because you gain double the amount of points from winning than you do from losing. But one thing I think they should consider implementing is maybe a hard cap on Fighter 3. What I mean by that is maybe if you get to the 1400 point mark, if you get above 1400 and you're still Fighter 3, that's when you should be able to start pulling C1s. If you're below 1400, you should only be able to fight F3s and below.
Yeah.
And I think that creates a bit of a wall, because the issue right now is there are some people that are Fighter 3 pulling C2s, which is very unfair because, they might have just broken into F3. And I think that should kind of go away, and it would show you it would distinguish people that are more F3/C1 rank compared to the people that are F2, F3 border, who just get clobbered by someone that's C1, C2, because there's such a big difference in the quality of players at that rank. F3 is such a wide bracket that, you know, there's probably you spoke about this yesterday. There's probably a whole rank in between Fighter and Conqueror worth of players sitting at Fighter 3 right now.
Exactly, and that definitely gets me to my next point. What my suggestion for this would be is definitely add a rank between Fighter and Conqueror, for sure. So 3 more divisions between that. Obviously, the percentage there is pretty much up to Com2us, but I would suggest something like 20%, 35%, and 50% for rank percentage, meaning we would dim down the 85% of players that definitely are in Fighter 3 to like 45%, and spreading definitely the player base between more ranks in there, and also definitely slightly increasing the rewards for this like in between rank. I think you talked about something like a 4-star skin for units that should be at Conqueror then. And
correct. Yeah, so I spoke about Guardians still having the Nat 5 skins.
Yeah.
Conqueror getting a Nat 4 skin, and then the Conqueror auras going to this new rank bracket, and then obviously the fighters get the ride already. So exactly. That's what I think would be a nice structure. So it doesn't take away what people could already get, but it makes it a bit more valuable trying to get to that Conqueror range, which a lot of people are striving for. You know, early fighter players are striving for Conqueror. A lot of Conqueror players are striving to get into Guardian. And it'd be cool to be able to, you know, it'll kind of promote a lot more RTA play for people that are trying to, you know, because right now Fighter 3 is such a big bracket.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see, you know, who's actually Fighter 3, but who could be this new rank 1, new rank 2, new rank 3 sort of thing. And get to see those players kind of stand out a bit more as well.
Exactly. So let's move on to the next point. We are on mana. Now, you said mana is not really that much of an issue in terms of like having too much of it, because there is still a use for it. But I still would like an additional use for mana, and a friend of mine actually came up with this suggestion right here. So what I would like to see, obviously the value may be adjusted there as well, but I would like to see a possibility for refreshing your shop not only with crystals, but also with using mana. No, I suggested a value for like 500,000 mana right here. This is definitely a use for mana for players only that have a lot of it. For example, like me, I have like 1.7 billion mana right now. And yeah, there's just no use for it for me. Obviously, when you play like higher end siege, just like Lucky does, you end up changing your runes around on your siege teams, on your siege offenses, on your siege defenses a lot more, which definitely takes up mana over the course of some time. But for a lot of players, that's just not the case, and I would like to see an additional use for mana for people that have a lot of it.
For sure, and I think one thing that might come out in the future is, yeah, maybe another shop, maybe an extension, maybe the ability to, you know, buy 4-star, like set 4-star pieces from a fixed shop or something like that. I don't know. Like, it'd be cool to see something else come out, but the issue is like also making sure it's still balanced for the early gamer. You don't want to create this new resource that is very hard to get because of mana constraints. So they're going to find the right balance of use of it. And I think, you know what, it's not a bad idea. You know, if you charge 500k for one refresh of the shop, which is usually 3 crystals, and people are willing to pay it, then sure, like that's okay.
Exactly.
Right? Some people think, well, that's crazy, but then you'll have yourself on stream just going, click refresh, 1 million mana just gone. It's nothing. I mean, that's the difference between, you know, someone that's late game versus someone that's early game. So I think as long as they find the right balance and it's something that doesn't really sway the game in the favor of a late gamer, then it's fair, I think.
The point why I would set this mana cost so high is because I wouldn't want early gamers to actually spend their mana on this. I would like them to be like, okay, that's too much for me. I cannot do this. I need to upgrade my runes. I need to do power-ups for my monsters and stuff like that. I do not have the resources to refresh shop.
What about making it a shop refresh, but making it a wish?
Oh, that's actually another idea that I thought about. I would like that. But then again, I don't really... There's one thing about the Wish that annoys me, and I just want to tap into this really quickly. There's a 0.5% chance to land on the monster icon. And the 0.5% chance divides up into like 0.1, 0.13, 3 point something, 0. I don't know, and 0.01% for net 5. So actually getting a net 5 from a Wish, let's be LD specific right here, is the same rate as summoning 35 LD net 5s from Skulls.
That's crazy.
I think that's just a little bit too low in terms of a chance.
I mean, it is a wish, right?
That's why it's slightly.
It's not called guaranteed LD Nat 5. It's called a wish.
I mean,
it's like winning the lottery. It's insane.
Let's put it in a different way. If I were to use 20 crystals every time on a wish, and also you definitely have a chance to get your crystals back, right? But if you actually calculate that out in terms of money, it would be more worth it and more rewarding to actually buy lotto tickets than to spend money on a wish. You would actually get more of a money return,
Some sort of return
from lotto tickets.
That's scary.
Yeah. Okay, we don't have too much time left, so we only have 2 points as well, and I also pretty much excluded this one because we talked about this before with the Mio kind of thing.
Yeah.
So let's just quickly say, okay, Com2us should have a 1-turn cooldown pretty much on his passive. Well, actually a 2-turn cooldown, because he gets a turn from his passive, reducing this cooldown to 1 turn, then has to get a natural turn after proccing to have his passive up again. This is just like to take completely like Com2us going out of control out of the picture, right? For example, if someone runs, I don't know, whatever turn 1 kind of team, and your Com2us goes every turn proc, 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 and pretty much despair stunts the entire enemy team, that's just a little bit too much. So yeah, add 1 turn of cooldown on his passive.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a fair way to go with it.
Yeah. So the last kind of point was every monster has 15% base crit. I personally don't really like the way Mio works as like a slot 5 pick, because it's just like praying your enemy actually crits if he picks a crit heavy team. And I would like to see a passive rework right here under the passive fixes. I think making it like Garo passive would just kill the unit, that's a little bit too much. But like a rework to Mio's passive would be appreciated, even though it's not necessary since we have been getting a lot of counters versus Mio.
Yeah, so one thing I think they could do with Miho, but what scares me about changing Miho is they've already introduced units that don't crit, the Onimushas, for example. But one thing I'd like potentially that they could do with Miho to make it a bit fairer is add in the passive that it reduces the crit chance by 15% when the opponent attacks it at the start, because that gets rid of innate crit rate. So it makes the 15 crit rate unit have 0% chance to crit.
That's actually pretty nice. I don't know if this would be too much to ask for, but I think that would actually be a fair change to it.
Because if units have a 15% chance to crit, it makes that unit very hard to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a bit unfair because it's a unit that relies on units being built for crit. It doesn't take away from units from critting that are made to crit, but it makes it fair on units that aren't made to crit to kind of have a chance.
Yeah. Alright, so yeah, that would pretty much sum it up for me. Do you have anything additional that you want to mention to any of these points?
Not really. I mean, obviously we've just recently had the crit rate change come in, so it'd be good to see how that impacts the game.
For sure.
And it'd be cool to see what sort of future, you know, especially with all the notes they came out with from the discussions, well, Com2us had with the Korean guild leaders as part of all that debacle that happened recently. It'd be cool to see what sort of ideas they come out of that. And really, it'd be interesting to see what else they consider moving forward, because some of the things they discussed in there can change the game quite dramatically. Not only for RTA, but also for people that do like to focus on guild content. There's a lot of stuff there that, you know, we'll have available to us.
Yeah, and yeah, we definitely hope that Com2us introduces quite a few of these changes, hopefully. Obviously, anniversary is coming up, right? They have a lot of stuff probably planned for that as well. But after the anniversary, I would like to see some of these changes being implemented. Yeah, any last thoughts, words, anything?
Not really. Make sure you guys leave
Alright.
a comment below. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you keep supporting Unholy Blood, because you'll get more ideas like this come out, and it'd be awesome to, you know, get your guys' thoughts on what else would you like to see happen to the game, and how would you make it work as well, because that's the really important part. It's great to have ideas, but it's really important to see how you can apply it evenly or balanced to, you know, into the game, because it's, you know, we can always ask for many things, but a lot of the times a lot of things are just a very unbalanced sort of thing. So it'd be cool to get some ideas to see what you guys think, and you know, maybe in the next video you can take up some of those, you know, YouTube comments and see, you know, what people had in mind, because it'd be awesome to see what other people have to say, for sure.
For sure, man. All right. Thank you for joining me. Definitely, it was a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you guys all for watching, and we will see you all on the next live stream or video. Peace out, guys. Bye.
See you guys.